You did it this morning. You probably did it without noticing. You walked into a room full of people and something in your chest shifted. A small, quiet pressure. A flicker of self-awareness that wasn't there a second ago. You adjusted your posture. Maybe you touched your hair. Maybe you glanced around to read the room before you said a word. You tell yourself it doesn't matter what strangers think. But your body already decided otherwise. And here is the strange part. That pressure you felt, it is not a flaw. It is not insecurity. It is not something you need to fix. It is one of the oldest survival systems your species ever built. And it has been running inside every human being for at least 200,000 years. The real reason you care what strangers think has almost nothing to do with vanity. It has everything to do with staying alive. To understand it, you have to go back. Not a few decades, not a few centuries. You have to go back to a world before cities, before roads, before the concept of a stranger even existed in the way it does today. You have to go back to the African savannah, somewhere between 100,000 and 300,000 years ago, to a band of roughly 20 to 50 people who were your direct ancestors. In that world, there were no strangers. Everyone you encountered, you either knew deeply or feared immediately. The unknown face on the horizon was not a commuter on the subway. It was a threat, a rival, a potential enemy. Your brain learned to read social signals the way a tracking system reads heat. Fast, automatic, constant. Anthropologist Robin Dunbar spent decades studying human social cognition. His research revealed something that changed how scientists think about the brain itself. He found that the size of the neocortex in primates, the part of the brain responsible for complex thought, directly correlates with the size of the social group that species lives in. Larger groups require more social processing power. The human neocortex, the largest relative to body size of any primate, evolved to track relationships, read intentions, and monitor reputation inside a group of roughly 150 people. That number is now known as Dunbar's number. 150 people. That was your entire social world for most of human history. And in that world, your reputation was not abstract. It was survival. Think about what it meant to be cast out from the group. There was no apartment you could retreat to. There was no grocery store. There was no city full of anonymous strangers where you could start over. Exclusion from the group meant exposure to predators. It meant no one to help you find food. It meant dying alone in the dark. Being rejected, disliked, or deemed untrustworthy was not a social setback. It was a death sentence. Your brain evolved to treat social rejection as a physical threat, not metaphorically, literally. Psychologist Naomi Eisenberger at UCLA ran a now-famous study using brain imaging technology. She had participants play a simple online ball-tossing game while lying inside an fMRI scanner. Partway through, the other players, who were actually computer programs, stopped throwing the ball to the participant. They were socially excluded from the game. The brain scans showed something remarkable. The same neural regions that activate when you feel physical pain lit up when a person was excluded from a game. The anterior cingulate cortex, the same area that processes a burned hand or a twisted ankle, responded to social rejection as if it were bodily harm. Your brain does not distinguish clearly between being left out and being hurt, because for most of human history, they were the same thing. And this is where the stranger problem becomes interesting, because today, you do not live in a band of 50 people. You live in a world of 8 billion. You pass hundreds of strangers every single day. You see thousands more on your phone. None of them know you. Most of them will never see you again. Their opinion of you carries essentially zero survival weight. And yet your nervous system does not know that. When someone glances at you on the street, your social monitoring system activates. When you post something online and wait for a response, the same ancient circuitry that once tracked your standing in the tribe is now tracking likes. When a stranger at a party seems uninterested in what you are saying, a small part of your brain files it as a threat signal. Not because it is one, but because it cannot tell the difference. Evolutionary psychologist Mark Leary developed what he called sociometer theory. The idea is elegant. He proposed that your sense of self-esteem is not actually a measure of how good you feel about yourself. It is a social monitoring instrument, a gauge that tracks how accepted, valued, and included you are by the people around you. When the gauge drops, you feel bad. Not because of some abstract psychological damage, but because the gauge is telling you that your standing in the group may be at risk. And historically, that meant your life was at risk. Self-esteem is not a feeling. It is a warning system. And it has been tracking strangers your entire life because in the ancestral world, strangers were the biggest variable your status had to account for. Here is the twist that makes this even stranger. You are not just tracking what strangers think of you. You are constantly predicting it, running simulations, imagining how you will come across before you have even said a word. This mental process has a name. Psychologists call it mentalizing or sometimes theory of mind. It is your brain's ability to model the internal states of other people, to guess what they are thinking, feeling, and planning. Human beings have the most sophisticated mentalizing ability of any species on Earth. You can hold in your mind what you think about what someone else thinks about what a third person might think about you. That is third-order social modeling. It is cognitively extraordinary. And it almost certainly evolved not for deep philosophical reflection, but for the very practical business of navigating reputation in a group where everyone was watching everyone else. The problem is that this system runs in overdrive in the modern world. You are not in a group of 50. You are in a crowd of thousands. And your mentalizing circuitry cannot easily distinguish between a person who will remember your stumble forever and a stranger you will never see again. It treats all social observation as potentially consequential. Because once upon a time, it all was. Social psychologist Thomas Gilovich at Cornell University studied this phenomenon and named it the spotlight effect. In a series of experiments, he had participants wear an embarrassing t-shirt into a room full of people. Afterward, he asked the participants to estimate how many people in the room had noticed the shirt. They consistently overestimated, sometimes by a factor of 2. The truth was that most people were far too absorbed in their own experience to pay close attention to someone else's clothing. The spotlight effect is your social monitoring system misfiring in a world it was not designed for. It evolved to assume you were being watched because in the ancestral group, you almost certainly were. Every behavioral choice had an audience. Every public failure was witnessed. There was no anonymity in a band of 50 people, so your brain defaulted to assuming all eyes were on you. In the modern world, they mostly are not, but the ancient circuitry does not know how to adjust the signal. And here is something even more unsettling. The same mechanism that makes you care about strangers also makes you remember social pain far more vividly than physical pain. Researchers have found that people can deliberately recall the emotional sting of social rejection years after the fact with remarkable clarity, while the specific sensation of physical pain fades much faster from memory. Your brain prioritizes the memory of social threat because social threat, in the world you were built for, was the threat most likely to repeat. The face of the person who humiliated you in front of the group is more dangerous than the rock that cut your foot. The rock will not come back. The person might. So the next time you feel that quiet pressure walk into a room with you, that small adjustment of posture, that flicker of self-awareness around people who do not know your name, do not call it weakness. Do not call it vanity. Recognize it for what it is. A 200,000-year-old survival system doing exactly what it was designed to do. Reading the room, tracking the group, protecting you from the threat that, for most of human history, killed more people than any predator. The strangers around you are not your tribe. Your nervous system just has not gotten that update yet. You will walk into a room again tomorrow. Something in your chest will shift. You will adjust your posture. Maybe you will touch your hair. And somewhere underneath the anxiety and the self-consciousness, underneath all the noise of the modern world pressing in on an ancient brain, there will be something that has been running since long before you had a name for it. Something that looked out at the horizon, read the faces there, and kept your ancestors alive long enough for you to exist. You were never overthinking it. You were just built this way.